Hello and welcome back to the box office, guys. Now, before we get started, remember boxofficeboxing.com is now live. I've actually uploaded some articles for you guys to read. They should be up by the time this video is up, if not the morning of. I know I upload my videos fairly late depending on where you are at. Social media handles are attached to the description box of this video. So go ahead and give us a follow so that we can keep growing and moving forward. Now, this week, we have an intriguing matchup, one that has and features George Kambosos, unified champion, against WBC champion Devin the Dream Haney. As I mentioned, an intriguing matchup because Devin Haney was awarded the WBC belt and is looking to unify and become undisputed, just like George Kambosos is. George Kambosos, though, actually just had a massive Vegas underdog win. He pulled off a massive upset, defeating Teofimo Lopez in a bout that was rescheduled multiple times. There was drama with the promotional company, the host that was going to host the fights, the venue. Ultimately, the fight got done. They met in the center of the ring, and George Kambosos pulled off a massive upset victory. Now, let's take a look at both of these fighters to get a little more background on them. And we're going to start with the Vegas underdog, who also happens to be the man who holds the more of the titles, George Kambosos. George Kambosos is going to enter the ring at 20-0, unblemished record, with 10 victories coming by the way of knockout. He is 5'9.5", and he has a 68-inch reach. Keep those stats in mind because they're going to be interesting later on when I explain Devin Haney's. His last 3 fights, though, keep and look at this common trend. He defeated Teofimo Lopez by split decision victory in a fight that was potentially fight of the year. Both fighters were dropped in this fight, by the way. He then, prior to that, defeated Lee Selby, split decision victory as well. And before then, Mickey Bay, another split decision victory. So, he's in a 3-fight split decision victory streak. And for those of you wondering and leaning towards betting towards a knockout, his last stoppage was actually June 7th of 2019 against Richard Pena. So it's been quite some time since he's been able to stop an opponent, and he's been in a split decision winning streak. Moving over and shifting sides to the opposite end, we have Devin Haney, who is actually a -176 Vegas underdog, meaning you have to bet $176, and if he pulls off the victory, which Vegas thinks he will, you get $100 in return. He's going to enter the ring at 27-0, with 15 of those wins coming by the way of knockout. He is 5'8", so he is 1.5 inches shorter than George Kambosos, but he has a 3-inch reach advantage. Very interesting to see how this fight plays out. His last 3 fights, and Devin Haney is building a nice little resume. He has victories over Jojo Diaz, unanimous decision, Jorge Linares, unanimous decision, and Yuriorkis Jumboa, unanimous decision. So now, just how George Kambosos in a split decision win streak, Devin Haney is in a unanimous decision win streak. His last stoppage, again, for those of you wondering, was November 13th of 2019 against Zaur Abdullayev. Whether this fight goes the distance is to be determined, but the odds makers, as I mentioned, are leaning towards it going the 12 rounds. Now, before we get going to the keys of victory, this is a big fight, international fight, so the odds are actually a little bit earlier. Good for us. So I made this little betting guide, and we're going to start off with the Vegas underdog, George Kambosos. George, as I mentioned, his money line is at a plus $142, meaning you bet $100, and if he wins, it will technically be an upset, and for those $100, you'll get $142 in return. Do you think he can pull off An even bigger upset and stop Devin Haney, that's sitting at a plus 550. You bet $100 and you get $550 in return if that does happen. Now, do you think he's going to get a decision victory? That is sitting at a plus 260. And may I add that plus 260, he is in a 3-fight split decision victory streak. Just throwing that out there so you can see and either roll with the pattern or against it. Flipping it over to Devin Haney, his money line is at a minus 176. Again, I mentioned you bet $176, and if he wins any way, shape, or form, you get 100 in return. Interestingly enough, by TKO, he is also sitting, in the 500s. He's at a flat plus 500 by KO/TKO. Meaning you bet $100, and if he knocks out or stops George Kambosos, you get 500 in return. By decision victory, that's sitting at a plus 100, or as we call it, an even line. Dollar for dollar. You bet $1, you get $1 back. $1.50, you get $1.50 back. That is at a flat even line, and he is in a 3-fight decision victory. Ride the wave or against it, either or. The pattern is there. Let's see what happens. Now, the over-under, I found one that was at 10.5. Is this fight going to go over or under 10.5 rounds? And interestingly enough, there wasn't much value on the over, as it's sitting at a minus 400. The odds makers do believe that this fight is going to go the distance, so the 10.5 is kind of just there if you're trying to take the under. And the under is sitting at a plus 275, meaning you bet $100, and if the fight is stopped before 10.5 rounds have passed, you get 275 in return. If this fight goes the distance, it's sitting at a minus 290, as I mentioned before. The odds makers do believe this fight is going to go the distance. If it doesn't go the distance, it's sitting at a plus 215. Now, interestingly enough, the draw is set at a plus 1800. At a plus 1800, you bet $100, and if this fight is a draw, you get $1,800 in return. I'll explain why that is worth a sprinkle towards the end of the video. Moving forward, let's take a look at the keys of victory for both fighters. Let's start off, I've been starting off with the Vegas underdog. Let's start off with the Vegas underdog, George Kambosos. Keys of victory for George Kambosos. Well, key number 1 is going to be adjusting to Devin Haney's speed. Now, it's a little bit different than Teofimo's speed because Teofimo came in very aggressive and rugged. Devin Haney's style is a bit more, or a lot more, defensive. So that speed is to tap and move out the way. So with George Kambosos, what you got to do is you got to realize, find a nudge, find something that kind of triggers you to shoot when Devin Haney shoots. If it's a lazy jab or a right hand, you have to time Devin Haney coming in with his punches so that you can make him kind of a little more tentative when throwing that jab, that right hand, that check hook. You can throw some feints in there and you can catch some of those punches, but you don't want to catch everything because some of those punches will land. So start timing him. Shoot when he shoots. Catch and shoot, but mainly try to shoot when he shoots, because if you catch and then shoot, chances are he won't be there to get hit anymore. So start timing that speed, start timing that jab, start timing that right hand, and make sure you're at that distance so that you can time that punch. Step number 2 is going to be invest to the body. And this is very important because Devin Haney is a fighter that's very elusive, very defensive minded, and he looks to go the distance and win on points. Investing to the body and slowing his wheels down are going to slow him down towards the second half of the fight. Slowing him down is going to make him a little bit more susceptible to be caught by a big punch, or not just a big punch, a flurry of punches, potentially even putting him in a susceptible position so that you can take over and start building momentum. But key number 3 is going to be press all 12 rounds. And not just press, like go all out. It's going to be that effective aggressiveness. Be in front of him so that he's nice and tense and he's not relaxed fighting off his back foot, shoulders relaxed. No. Make sure that you're in that distance to where if he relaxes, you can catch him with a jab. So that he has to have his hands up, his shoulders nice and tense. Because what that does, it fatigues him for the second half of the fight. And if you're throwing punches to the body, and he's always nice and tense because you're pressing the action, being very effective, you're going to tire him out and make him more susceptible to get hit towards the second half of the fight. And that's why you have to be patient with this, but it's your game plan to landing and fighting the whole 12 rounds. Fight moving forward. Be effective, be aggressive, keep him nice and tense, invest to the body, and you're going to put yourself in a very good position, very good, to potentially pull off your second upset in boxing. Now, moving over to Devin Haney. Keys of victory for Devin Haney. Well, the thing about Devin Haney is he's a well-scouted fighter now that he's been getting more of those high-caliber names. So first things first, as I mentioned, Kambosos has to adjust to the speed. Well, you can't negate your speed. You got to use it. You can't neglect that speed because if you neglect it, you're neglecting your probably best asset as a fighter. Straight punches. Work off that jab. Use that speed to touch him up. You have the reach advantage, so go ahead and use it. Use that reach. Use that speed. Throw that jab, double jab, triple jab if you have to. Followed by that right hand after you blind him with that jab. But make sure that it's nice and quick. Step number 2 is going to be mix up that right hand to the head and to the body. Something about Devin Haney, as I mentioned, he's well scouted. Something that I really like is the way he uses that right hand to not just go to the head, but stab to the body. It's very important, it's very vital in this fight to go to the body as often as possible, and especially landing that clean right hand, because that's going to open up the right hand up top, as well as taking some steam off Kambosos' attack and power. So use that right hand. I think it's a very underrated asset of yours. I think it's probably your better punch because that right hand stabbing someone to the body is going to start taking a toll towards the second half of the fight. And we both know that George Kambosos is going to be ready to fight 12 rounds as he did with Teofimo Lopez. So that right hand, use it and use it often. Key number 3 is going to be stay focused the 12 rounds. Haney, something that we've seen the last 2 fights is you get hit a little bit more towards the second half of the fight. And it's understandable. The body starts losing its crispness, its explosiveness, its stamina. But you want to stay focused to where you're just not standing in range to get hit without reacting to anything. Not to get baited in with you throwing a lazy jab and getting hit with the right hand over the top. We saw it with Jorge Linares, and we saw it again with Jojo Diaz where you were getting hit a little bit more towards the second half of the fight. Unnecessary punches that you need to be taking, unnecessary punches that might sway rounds to George Kambosos, specifically being that, we are in his backyard. So, stay focused. Build off of that right hand and start throwing 1s and 2s and 3s, but don't let yourself stay there, lose focus, you throw a lazy jab, and you get hit with something over the top. Don't just cover up, and try to catch everything. Stay focused. If you're slipping punches, ducking and weaving, bobbing and weaving, make sure you do it the whole 12 rounds. You stay focused, you're going to put yourself in a very good position to not pull off an upset, but do what Vegas expects you to do and win a decision victory. Now, as far as my prediction goes for this video, it's a tough one, but I'll explain it this way. Betting wise, it's about that I wouldn't bet the favorite because it's in someone else's backyard. We've seen this story time and time again. The fighter, the challenger, goes to someone's backyard. They put on a great performance. They think they won the fight. Unfortunately, everyone thinks they won the fight except for the judges and, of course, the home crowd, right? So, for my prediction, I think, let's word it this way. I think Devin Haney wins the fight, but I think George Kambosos wins the fight, if that makes sense. I do feel that Devin Haney is going to win the bout, but I do feel like there's going to be a little bit of home cooking. So if I were to bet, I'm of course going to go with the underdog because just of home cooking, boxing history, and, unfortunately, it's a part of the game, and home field advantage really pays off for the home fighter. So I think Devin Haney wins the fight, but I think George Kambosos wins the fight. Anything that's a close give and take fight, give and take round is going to go to the home fighter, which is going to be George Kambosos. Rightfully so, though, because he did earn it by coming over here and defeating Teofimo Lopez for all his belts. So it's not like it was gifted to him, it was earned. So he's earned this right to fight in front of his home crowd. I just hope that Devin Haney can stay disciplined and fight a good, clean fight to give himself the best chance to win and come out on top. But as I mentioned, I think Devin Haney wins the fight, but George Kambosos wins the fight, if that makes sense. Seen this story time and time again. Maybe I'm a little paranoid. I don't know. But what do you guys think? How do you think this fight's going to unfold? What do you guys see happening? Any big shots? Anyone getting wobbled? Let me know in the comments section. Let's talk boxing. We had a great week last week. Let's keep the momentum going. And remember, boxofficeboxing.com, and then our social media handles are attached to the description box. Take care. Let's talk boxing. See you guys next week.